Teamwork isn't just nice to have in business, it's the undisputed competitive advantage. When your team members work as a unified force, your whole operation benefits through higher productivity, thriving creativity, and unstoppable momentum. Welcome to the Impactful Teamwork Podcast, where we share with you strategies and tactics to help you develop game-changing teams so that you and your business can make a real difference in the world. So welcome to this week's edition of Impactful Teamwork. And I just want to start this episode by taking you on a little bit of a journey, because it's June. I know a lot of you are beginning to think about taking your summer holidays. So what would happen if you come back from holiday and you find 100 decisions waiting for you? Not 100 emails, 100 decisions, things that should have happened while you were away, things that your leadership team are paid, very well paid to resolve, and yet they're left there. They remain queued up, waiting for you. And as you enter the office on your return from vacation, it's as if the business has been on hold and nothing really has happened since you left the building. So if that's ever happened to you, or you are worried that might happen to you this summer, then this episode is for you. Because that moment, that pile of decisions on your return is not a holiday problem. It's a diagnostic. It's your organization and your business telling you something that it never says in a meeting. So today I wanted to delve into this expensive and least discussed problem in scaling businesses. And it's this concept of decision drag. And it's, why do decisions keep climbing back up the hierarchy? What does accountability actually mean? And why it is not what most leaders think? And what genuinely do high accountability teams do different each and every single week? So what is the real cost of accountability that nobody really focuses on? And it's this. Some research by McKinsey found that executives spend on average 37% of their time on decisions that could and should be made by somebody further down the organizational chain. So these aren't complex strategic decisions. They're not board level judgments. They're just routine decisions about budget approvals, supplier choices, hiring sign-off, operational trade-offs. The kind of decisions that your leadership team is theoretically empowered to make. So just think about that for a moment. 37% of your time is spent on decisions that could be delegated down the organization. So just imagine you're working a 50-hour week, and unfortunately, I know many of you are often working more than that. That's 18 and a half hours a week that's spent doing the wrong type of work. 18 and a half hours that you're not spending on the strategy that only you can develop, on the relationships that only you can build, and on the future of the business that only you can see clearly. That's not just inefficiency, that's a structural tax on your company's growth, and it compounds. Every week, you as the CEO remain the bottleneck. The team learns more firmly that they should wait. And it's not because they're incapable, because they're not. It's because the system has taught them that the right answer always involves you. Every time you as the leader weigh in, every time you quietly override, every time you CC yourself on a thread just to stay close to it, every time you want to feel like you're in control, the system updates, the team learns, and the queue gets a little bit longer. And this is what I call the accountability trap. And almost every scaling business I work with is caught in it at some point in time. And the trap has a very specific mechanism. Leaders build businesses by being the most capable, the most committed, the most decisive person in the room. That quality, that relentless ownership is exactly what got the business here. But it's also the thing that is quietly preventing it from going further. Because at a certain point in the business's growth, the founder's greatest strength becomes the team's greatest crutch. The moment the leader always decides, the team stops developing the muscle to decide. And it's not a character failure, it's a rational adaptation. If someone always catches the ball, you stop throwing it with any real intent. And this was just really highlighted to me last week when I was running an event, because one of the leaders was really struggling with this particular problem. They really didn't want to give away control of the business. They had a fear of when they empowered and delegated effectively to their team members that they would lose control. And I understand that. This is a business that you have grown, you have nurtured. It is flourishing under your guidance. But the problem is you cannot scale that business if you are always in the way. And so we always talk about, in order for your business to grow to the next level, you as a leader need to do something different. And this is exactly an example of that. If you want your business to scale, you have to grow and develop as a leader and do something different. And that doing something different is to give away the reins, is to empower your team members, to help them feel that they have the skills and the resources to make those decisions for you and not feel like they have to keep referring everything to you. So, what is accountability? Because accountability is not what you think it is. And I really find this word accountability getting misused constantly, because most leaders hear the word accountability and immediately think consequences. Somebody didn't hit a target, somebody dropped the ball, now somebody pays a price. And that's not accountability. That's blame with better branding, right? So accountability is not about blame. Real accountability has nothing to do with what happens after things go wrong. Real accountability is a posture, a decision made in advance to stand behind an outcome as if it is yours, regardless of who else is involved, regardless of whether you're being watched, regardless of whether it is convenient. There's also a distinction worth drawing here between responsibility and accountability, because these are two words that very often we use interchangeably, thinking they mean the same thing, and they don't. So in simple terms, responsibility is what you are assigned. It's task focus. It can be shared, distributed, delegated. 5 people can be responsible for different things on a project. Accountability, however, is what you choose to own. It's outcome focused. It's singular. You cannot accountability a group. Let me say that again. You cannot accountability a group. At the end of the day, one person either stands behind the results or they find they don't. And here's why this matters practically. You can build a team full of responsible people who do their jobs, hit their tasks, show up and contribute. And you still can have a collectively unaccountable team, because nobody owns the outcome. Nobody is standing behind the result as theirs. And where do we see this most? We see this most in cross-functional work, particularly in a matrixed organization. So maybe the marketing team did their part, the sales team did their part, the product team did their part, but the launch was still missed. And nobody owns the miss, because everyone was responsible, but nobody was accountable. And in the leadership work I do when I bring people out to work with the horses, this pattern shows up with remarkable clarity. When I bring the group into the arena and give them a task without clear leadership, without named ownership, the horses just drift, they disengage, they find something more interesting to do in the field. And it's not obstinance. The horses are really sensitive to clarity of intention. When the human energy is diffused, unfocused, and uncertain, they simply opt out. And that's exactly what teams do. When there's unclear ownership, we produce disengagement each and every time. So here's the reason why most accountability initiatives, things like workshops, culture programs, values exercises, produce a short-term shift and then fade back to people behaving in their old patterns the following month. Because we address accountability at one level, but we expect a change on all three levels. So let me explain what I mean by this, because accountability operates differently at an individual level, a team level, and at the organizational level. And if you only fix one, the other two pull the system back to where it was. So let's look at each in turn. Individual accountability. This is the foundation, and it requires three conditions to be simultaneously true. First of all, we need clarity. We need the person to know precisely what they own, not roughly, not in theory, but specifically and ambiguously. Secondly, we need capability. The person needs to have the genuine authority and skills to deliver it. And thirdly, psychological safety. People need to believe that honesty about progress, problems, and even failure will be received without punishment. And it's this third condition, this one of psychological safety, that really trips most organizations up. And research published by the Journal of Business Ethics synthesized over 100 studies on accountability over the last decade. And this research confirms that accountability offers very differently depending on whether people feel safe to fail. When the culture makes ownership feel risky, when raising the problem is more dangerous than concealing it, individual accountability goes underground. People do the work, but they don't just stand behind it. So what I typically see are leadership team members not avoiding accountability because they're lazy or disengaged. They're avoiding it because somewhere along the line, the culture taught them that stepping forward is a risk, not a reward. Now, team accountability, this is a little bit more complex, and it is different from the sum of individual accountabilities. And again, research from 2021, a study again published by the Journal of Business Ethics, describes team accountability as what they call strong emergence, a collective state that arises from individuals but exceeds them. So a team can have individually accountable members and still function with collective unaccountability. Because team accountability requires something individual accountability doesn't. Team accountability requires a mutual investment in each other's outcome. So a highly accountable team is not just a group of people who know each other's lanes and expertise. It's a group of people who are genuinely invested in their colleagues' success or failure. And it's where somebody notices that one of their peers is off track and feels obligated to say something by a genuine commitment that they want everyone to achieve the goal. And this is the state that I call teamship. And this is what I believe is a real hidden competitive superpower in most scaling businesses. Not teamwork, people cooperating on tasks, but rather teamship, a team that co-owns outcomes and is building it very differently from building individual performance. And thirdly, organizational accountability. And this is the level that I very rarely see addressed. And it's the level that either enables or destroys everything above it. Because we know that a business is a living organism, it is a system, and the systems train our behavior, right? So if your decision architecture concentrates authority at the top, the team will learn to wait for permission. If your reward system, regardless of what your values and posters say on the wall, actually rewards people who manage upwards skillfully, your team will manage upwards. And if your information flows are structured so that bad news stays local and good news gets escalated, You'll see a team will make decisions with systematically incomplete information. So the important thing to realize here is you cannot accountability train your way out of a system that rewards avoidance. And this is why the RACI framework, the responsible, accountable, consulted, informed framework, which is really widely used in a lot of organizations for clarifying this distinction, consistently fails in practice because it treats accountability as structural. You put one person's name in the accountable column and assume that the culture follows, and it doesn't. The chart and the culture are entirely different things. So what do high accountability teams do different? Here are 5 things that I see consistently happening in high accountability teams that I don't see in teams that are stuck. And the first is ownership is publicly declared and it's not assigned privately. So there's no ambiguity about who owns what. That ownership is named out loud in front of the relevant people with specific commitments attached, not just the team is working on the Q3 campaign, but Sarah owns the Q3 campaign launch. She's committed to sign off on the brief by Thursday. What does she need from us? So you see the granularity of that. This naming, public, specific, and witnessed changes that psychology entirely. The thing is, accountability that exists in a spreadsheet has no social weight. Accountability that has been spoken, heard, and witnessed carries the pressure of a commitment. The second is the leader stops rescuing. And this for many leaders is the hardest one, but it's also the one that creates the most leverage. Because every time a leader steps in to fix something that's not theirs to fix, they're communicating something very precise. They're actually saying, I don't trust you to handle this. And the team hears that even when it's offered as help as being very helpful. And even when the leader believes they're just staying close to quality, the pattern is unmistakable. And the most accountable thing a leader can do is hold the line. Let the team feel the weight of their own decisions. And yes, this can be uncomfortable. And the first few times, things may not go quite as you would have liked them to have gone on your watch. The discomfort is not a problem to be dissolved. It's the cost of building muscle. So every time we encourage our team to make that decision, to push it back and say to them with great questioning, what decision would you make? We are helping them build that decision-making muscle. The third thing is that we see in high accountability teams is that Monday morning is quite different. The week begins with naming the owners and the live commitments that everyone's got. We don't re-establish what was discussed last week. The team does not spend Monday morning realigning because accountability switched off on Friday. The team keeps moving forward. Each person asks for what they need in order to ensure that they can meet their targets that week and stay accountable to them. Fourth, challenge flows in all directions. In low accountability cultures, challenge mostly goes upwards, carefully in private. People tell the boss what they think the boss wants them to hear, and the boss makes decisions on polished, managed information. And I think we've probably all been in a situation where we've seen that happen. People not wanting to really share what's going on. We see this a lot of the time. Just think about recently with the H2 project with the government. People not telling the government, people at the top, the decision makers, what was really going on. And of course, these projects massively overrun often in the public sector because nobody has been brave enough to say what needs to be said. And this is very different from a high accountability culture where people challenge each other across the table, across the function, across levels of seniority. And it's not personal and it's not political, but it's direct because they're collectively invested in the outcome being right, not the relationship being smooth. And actually, when I bring leadership teams together to work with the horses, again, this pattern shows up very quickly. The horses give unfiltered real-time feedback regardless of title. They don't know who's the CEO, they don't know who's the janitor. They only respond to what is actually present, the clarity of our intention, the coherence of our energy, the honesty of our attention. And what often surfaces in that field is a significant gap between the leader's self-perception and the signal they're actually giving. And that gap is expensive. And that is the gap that most conventional leadership tools like 360s, like service, and like culture workshops never quite close. And the fifth thing that high accountability teams do is when something goes wrong, there's a named owner, not a committee of the responsible. One person stands up and says, it was mine, and that's what happened, and that's what I'm doing about it. And this isn't about blame, it's about integrity. It creates that kind of safety, and that paradoxically makes people more willing to take on ownership because they know that owning up to something and failing at it is survivable. Maybe it's even respected. And then we create this invisible contract underneath everything. And this is what fuels a high trust performance team. And we know that we need a high trust performance team in order to get great performance within our business. So if you're totally resonating with everything I'm talking about today, and you're recognizing this in your team, or you're concerned that this might happen when you go away on your summer vacation, what do you do? So here are 3 things that you can do immediately. No budget required, no offsite needed. You can just start doing this right now. So the first thing is declare, don't just delegate. So the next time you assign something, name it publicly. Who owns it? What are the specific outcomes? When is it due? What do they need from you? And that single practice alone, repeated consistently, begins to rewire the expectations of your team. The second thing is stop rescuing. Identify the most predictable outcomes that come back to you that shouldn't. And this week, when it arrives on your desk, hold the line, give it back, ask great questions, and just push it back to the person who tried to escalate it to you. Yes, it will be tough because in your mind, you'll be thinking, I can do this quicker. I can get this done now. But if you keep rescuing people and keep making decisions for them, they'll never start feeling brave enough to make the decisions themselves. And the third thing you can do is create a weekly committed versus delivered practice. This is a simple, low-stakes ritual where the team honestly reflects on the gap between what they said they would do and what they actually did. No blame, just honesty. We start making accountability a habit rather than a threat. And those 3 things, if you do them consistently, will start to shift the system, not instantly, because these are muscle groups, not switches, but they work because they address directly the conditions under which accountability either flourishes or dies. So it's going to take time, just like going to the gym where you have to do your constant repetition to strengthen your muscles. We have to continually keep doing this in business until the team becomes accountable and takes accountability for the thing that they need to be doing. So if everything we've talked about today, decision drag, the accountability trap, the 3 levels that most organizations only half address, this is the conversation I'm going to be exploring in more detail on the 17th of June in an upcoming executive forum. These executive forums are new monthly events that I'm going to be running for 45 to 60 minutes that are really based on providing you with a platform where peers can come together and share ideas. I will set a bit of context about some of the current statistics and what's currently going on in that particular topic that we're discussing that month. And then we'll have some facilitated discussion around the topic, because what I'm increasingly seeing, and what I was seeing in the 20-minute teachings that I have been doing, is that actually the real juice and the real value was coming in the discussions that were happening after the 20-minute teach. So I was like, let's just extend the time of the session and allow everyone to be part of that discussion. So it'll be a small group. It's by invitation only, entirely focusing on things that are practical that you can change the following week. So if you'd like to come along to my next Decision Velocity, How Executive Teams Stop Becoming the Bottleneck Executive Forum on the 17th of June, please do just send me a message at julia@businesshorsepower.com and I can extend an invitation to you. So one last thought before you go. You didn't build your business to become the ceiling of it. And the team around you is more capable than the system that currently allows them to be. And your job as a leader right now in this stage of your business is to build the conditions so that others can actually do their job. And that is what accountability done correctly creates. It's not a culture of consequences, a culture of genuine ownership, where the business keeps moving, whether you are in the building or not, whether you are on vacation or not. So thank you for listening for this week's edition of Impactful Teamwork. If it was useful, I'd ask one thing: share it with one leader in your network who would recognize themselves in it. And this is how the conversation reaches the people who most need to hear it. So until next time, have an amazing week and think about how can you improve accountability within your team and your organization. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Impactful Teamwork podcast. Please stay tuned for future episodes and do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favorite platform. Recommendations are essential for attracting new listeners. Please follow us on social media at Julia Felton and at Business Horsepower. And if there are any topics you'd like us to cover on future episodes, please do let me know. Remember, you and your team are always making an impact. What impact will you make today?